Hey guys, welcome aboard to Snoozy Voyager, where tonight we are not sailing anywhere glamorous. We are not going to Paris, we are not going to Rome, we are going to the 14th century, specifically the year 1325, where the biggest political crisis on the continent involved a bucket. Yes, a bucket. Not a siege, not a throne, not a disputed heir, a bucket. So before we get into the glorious, deeply unnecessary chaos of medieval Europe, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Drop a little flag emoji if you feel fancy. I read them, I love them, and they make me feel slightly less like I'm narrating into the void at midnight. Now dim those lights, switch on your fan for that soft white noise, pull your blanket up, and tuck your feet in so the imaginary rats can't get to your toes. We have things to discuss. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to live in medieval Europe when half the continent was either on fire or arguing about who owned the fire? Did people in 1325 know they were living through history, or did it mostly just feel like a very bad Tuesday? What did you eat when your options were boiled grain, slightly worse boiled grain, or whatever fell off the cart? Was there a word for a bad day back then, or was every day just Tuesday? Could you walk down the street without somebody's pig getting in your way? What happened when two city-states went to war over stolen property, and that property was not gold or land or a royal heir, but an oak bucket from a well? Could you survive a life in which your entire social standing, your legal rights, your dinner and your chances of going to heaven were all determined before you were born? And most importantly, if you had to fight in a war started over a bucket, would you at least try to grab the bucket on the way out? Congratulations, you have just woken up in 1325. The Pope is in France and very annoyed about it. The Holy Roman Emperor is also annoyed, though about different things. Your city is probably at war with the city next door and nobody can fully remember why. You have a scratchy wool tunic, a suspiciously damp floor, and somewhere in northern Italy, two city-states are about to go to war over a piece of wood pulled from a well. Good morning. This is your life now. You wake up not to an alarm clock, but to the aggressive ringing of church bells that sound less like a gentle morning call and more like the town collectively panicking. The air is cool, slightly damp, and carries the scent of smoke, animals, and something vaguely sour that you will soon realise is just normal now. You're in Medina, a proud medieval city, and before you can even figure out where your socks are, or if socks exist, you hear shouting in the streets. Not casual shouting, passionate, deeply committed shouting. The kind that suggests someone has taken something very seriously. And as you sit up, wrapped in what feels like a blanket made of questionable decisions, you begin to realise that today is not going to be a quiet one. You lie there for a moment, staring at the wooden beams above you, which creak in a way that feels personal. The bells continue, loud, persistent, judgmental. In your old life, a sound like this would mean something dramatic, an emergency alert, maybe a fire, or a notification that your phone battery is at 1%. Here, it just means morning. Possibly also panic. It's hard to tell. The line between routine and crisis is very thin in 1325. You swing your legs over the side of what can generously be described as a bed, and your feet meet a floor that is cold, uneven, and slightly suspicious. There is no comforting rug, no soft landing, just wood that has seen things. You pause, waiting for your brain to catch up with your body. But your brain is still back in the 21st century, wondering why there is no coffee, and why everything smells like a fireplace that never quite stops. Outside, the shouting grows louder. You can hear distinct voices now, men arguing, women calling out, someone shouting something that sounds very important and possibly about honour, or bread, or both. You don't yet understand the language fully, but you understand tone, and the tone says this is serious. Possibly unnecessarily serious. You stand up slowly like someone who suspects gravity has changed overnight. Your joints protest in a way that feels ancient. Not old, ancient. As if your body has already adapted to this time period and decided to fully commit to discomfort. You stretch, and something in your back makes a sound that would normally require a follow-up appointment. There is light coming through a small window, if window is the right word for a hole with ambitions. The sunlight is soft, filtered through a haze of smoke and morning mist, giving everything a slightly dreamy quality. If you ignore the shouting, the smell, and the overwhelming sense of historical inconvenience. It's almost peaceful. Almost. You move toward the doorway, each step a careful negotiation with the floor. There are no clear paths, no reassuring signs that this structure was built with your safety in mind. You reach the door and hesitate for a moment, because once you open it, you're no longer just observing this world, you are in it, and judging by the volume of the bells and the enthusiasm of the shouting, this world is already having a day. You open the door, the street greets you like a conversation you didn't ask to join. People move quickly, purposefully, as if everyone received the same urgent message at the same time. A man rushes past carrying something that looks heavy and possibly symbolic. A woman is speaking rapidly to another, her hands moving in a way that suggests either storytelling or mild accusation. A child runs by completely unbothered, which is somehow the most concerning part. And above it all, the bells continue, steady, relentless. Like a soundtrack to poor decision-making. You take a step outside and the air hits you fully now. It's a mix of smoke from cooking fires, the earthy scent of animals, and the unmistakable presence of a city that does not believe in subtlety. It fills your lungs, and for a brief moment you consider the possibility that breathing is optional. It is not. You look around, trying to piece together what is happening. There are no signs, no announcements, no helpful notifications explaining the situation, just people reacting, moving, talking, preparing. And then you notice it. The direction of their attention, the way conversations seem to orbit around a single idea, the repeated gestures, the shared expressions, the collective focus of an entire city. Something has happened. Something important enough to ring every bell. Something serious enough to pull everyone into the streets. Something that has turned an ordinary morning into, whatever this is. You don't know it yet. But somewhere nearby, a bucket has already changed everything, and your day has barely started. Let's talk about mornings. Not your modern, coffee, scroll, regret kind of morning. No, your new routine begins with a quick internal check. Are you alive? Good. That's step one. Step two is figuring out what part of your body aches the most. The bed you woke up on is less luxury mattress and more wooden suggestion. Your back feels like it has been negotiating with gravity all night and lost. Outside, people are already working, arguing, feeding animals, and possibly plotting revenge. You stretch, and something cracks in a way that feels both concerning and deeply medieval. There is no slow start here. The day has already begun without you, and it expects you to catch up immediately. You sit there for a moment, taking inventory, not of your belongings, you don't really have any, but of your physical condition. Your neck feels like it spent the night in a disagreement with your spine. Your shoulders are tight, your legs uncertain, and your general sense of comfort has quietly left the building. This is not a gentle wake-up. This is a full-body reminder that you are now living in a time where comfort is more of a rumour than a guarantee. There is no snooze button, no soft music easing you into consciousness, no phone lighting up your face with notifications you pretend not to care about. Instead, your morning soundtrack is a blend of distant livestock, clattering tools, and human voices already operating at full emotional capacity. Someone nearby is arguing with impressive commitment. Another person is laughing loudly, which feels suspicious this early in the day. And somewhere, something metal hits something else metal in a way that suggests productivity or impending disaster. You take a breath. Immediately you regret it slightly. The air inside your room is thick. Not unbearable, just lived in. There is a lingering warmth from bodies, from last night's fire, from a general lack of ventilation. It's the kind of air that feels like it has stories, none of them particularly fresh. You consider opening a window, then remember the window is essentially a hole that invites both light and a variety of uninvited guests. You stand up again, more carefully this time, as if your body might file a complaint if you move too quickly. Your feet adjust to the floor, which remains unapologetically hard. There is no cushioning, no forgiveness, just a surface that says, this is what we're working with. Now comes the question of what to actually do. In your old life, mornings had structure, ritual, coffee first, then maybe breakfast, then a slow, reluctant engagement with responsibilities. Here, there is no buffer, no transition period. The world does not wait for you to feel ready. It assumes readiness, or at least, it doesn't care whether you have it. You notice movement outside your doorway, people passing by, already dressed, already focused. There is an unspoken expectation in the air. You're supposed to be doing something. What that something is remains unclear. But standing still feels like you're breaking a rule you haven't been told yet. You attempt to stretch again, this time more deliberately. Your arms rise, your back extends, and for a brief moment you feel almost human. Then something pops. Not painfully, just decisively. Like your body has officially clocked in for the day. You lower your arms and accept that this is as good as it gets. There is no mirror to check your appearance, no reassuring glance to confirm that you still look like yourself. You are operating on trust now, or perhaps denial. Either way, presentation is no longer your top priority. Survival has quietly taken that spot. You step toward the doorway again, this time with a bit more intention. The sounds outside are clearer now, footsteps, voices, the low hum of a city already in motion. You realise that whatever is happening out there, you are expected to be part of it. Not necessarily as a key player, more like an extra who still needs to hit their mark. And as you pause at the threshold, one thought settles in with surprising clarity. There is no going back to bed. Not because you don't want to, but because medieval life has already decided that your day is happening, whether you're ready or not. So you step forward. Because in 1325, your morning routine is simple. Exist, and hope it goes well. It's time for breakfast. Bad idea. You're handed something that resembles bread but has the emotional weight of a brick. This is your introduction to medieval cuisine. Simple, durable, and occasionally alive. You take a bite and immediately question every life choice that led you here. There's also something in a bowl that might be porridge, or soup, or a philosophical question. It's warm, which is encouraging, but the flavour is somewhere between earthy and did someone forget this existed. There is no coffee, there is no comforting routine, there is only chewing and hope. You stare at the bread for a moment longer than socially acceptable, turning it slightly in your hands like it might reveal its intentions. It does not. It just sits there, dense, confident and completely unbothered by your hesitation. You tap it lightly against the wooden table. It produces a sound that suggests it could double as construction material. You take another bite. It resists, not aggressively, just firmly, like it has a sense of purpose. You chew slowly, partly because you have to, and partly because you're trying to understand what exactly is happening in your mouth. The texture is dry but also somehow chewy, a combination you didn't think was possible without modern science. Across from you, someone is eating the same thing with complete focus. No hesitation, no confusion, just quiet determination. This is clearly not their first encounter with medieval breakfast. You try to mirror their confidence. It does not transfer. You reach for the bowl. The content shifts slightly, as if acknowledging your attention. Steam rises gently, carrying a smell that is not unpleasant, just vague, comfortingly vague. You dip whatever utensil you've been given, something between a spoon and a suggestion, into the mixture and lift it carefully. It drips, slowly. You bring it to your mouth and take a cautious sip. It is warm. That's the first thing you notice. Warm and soft, which immediately feels like an upgrade from the bread situation. The flavour is mild, almost shy. There's grain in there, maybe some vegetables, possibly a memory of seasoning. It's not bad. It's just not committed to being anything in particular. You take another sip. This time, you're less cautious. And that's when you notice a small, unexpected texture. Something that doesn't quite belong. You pause mid-chew, considering your options. You could investigate, or you could not. You choose not. This feels like a situation where curiosity is not rewarded. Around you, the room is filled with the quiet sounds of eating. Bowls being set down, bread being broken, sometimes literally. Occasional conversation drifts through. But it's not the kind of light morning chat you're used to. It's practical, direct, focused on the day ahead, which seems to involve a surprising amount of urgency for something that began with a bucket. You look around, noticing that no one is rushing, but no one is relaxing either. This is not a leisurely breakfast. This is fuel, necessary, functional, and slightly questionable. You try dipping the bread into the bowl. This helps. Slightly. The bread softens just enough to become manageable, though it still maintains a certain level of resistance, like it wants you to earn every bite. You chew again, more confidently this time, as if you've entered into an understanding with your food. You haven't, but it feels like progress. You swallow and immediately miss water. There is none. Instead, you are offered something in a cup. You take it, grateful, and take a small sip. It is not water. It's something fermented. Slightly sour, slightly bitter, and surprisingly strong for something you were expecting to be refreshing. You blink, processing the flavour, and then take another sip because what else are you going to do? Hydration, it seems, comes with personality here. You set the cup down and take a moment. This is your breakfast now. No menu. No substitutions. No reviews to check beforehand. Just whatever is available, prepared with varying degrees of enthusiasm and consistency. And yet, as you sit there chewing slowly, something shifts. You're eating. You're warm. You're surrounded by people who are doing exactly the same thing, facing the same bread, the same bowl, the same slightly mysterious drink. There's a strange kind of comfort in that. A shared experience of mild culinary confusion. You take another bite. It's still not great. But it's not shocking anymore either, and that might be the most medieval thing of all. Because breakfast here isn't about enjoyment. It's about survival, with a side of you'll get used to it. Eventually. Probably. Let's talk about bathing, or more accurately, the concept of bathing. You quickly learn that cleanliness in 1325 is less about daily practice and more about occasional ambition. Water is available technically, but heating it requires effort, planning, and a willingness to question your priorities. Most people simply do not bother unless absolutely necessary. You consider washing your face, then remember you have no mirror, no soap as you know it, and a strong chance of making things worse. Around you, the general aroma of humanity is present. It's not aggressive. It's just persistent, like a smell that has settled in and signed a lease. You pause for a moment, standing there, holding a vague intention to be clean. It feels like something you should do, something responsible, something your past self would expect. But as you look around, you begin to realize that the entire concept of freshness has been redefined. Not lowered, just reinterpreted. There is a bucket nearby. Not the bucket, just a bucket. You eye it cautiously. It contains water, which is promising, but also a floating leaf, which raises questions. You dip your fingers in. The water is cold, not refreshingly cold, not invigorating, just cold in a way that suggests regret. You pull your hand back immediately. In your old life, you had options. Hot showers, warm towels, products with names like mountain breeze and ocean mist, none of which actually smelled like mountains or oceans, but at least made an effort. Here, your options are water, possibly ash, maybe a cloth if you're lucky. You look around for something resembling soap. What you find instead is a rough greyish substance that appears to have been created by someone experimenting with disappointment. This, you're told through gestures and confident nodding, is soap. You are not convinced. Still, you give it a try. You wet your hands again, briefly, and rub the substance between them. It produces a faint lather, which is encouraging, but also a smell that can only be described as historical. Not bad, just deeply rooted in the past. You bring your hands to your face and begin the process of washing. It is not satisfying. There is no gentle cleanse, no refreshing sensation. Just a series of practical motions that result in your face being slightly less questionable than it was before. You splash a bit more water on, which mostly ends up on your clothes, and then stop. Because at some point you realize you are not getting cleaner. You're just redistributing the situation. You look up. No one is watching you with concern. No one is offering advice. In fact, most people are not engaging in this activity at all. They are moving about their day with a quiet confidence that suggests hygiene is not a pressing issue. And you begin to understand why. Bathing takes time. It takes resources. It takes effort that could be spent on things like working, eating, or discussing the ongoing bucket-related tensions that seem to be escalating by the minute. Cleanliness, in this world, is not about comfort. It's about necessity. And unless you are visibly alarming, you are probably fine. You take a step back from the bucket, your brief attempt at modern standards fading quickly. Your hands are damp. Your face is slightly improved. Your expectations have been gently lowered. You sniff the air again. It's still there. The collective scent of people, animals, fire, and time itself. But now it feels less offensive, more ambient, like background noise. But for your nose, you realise something important. You are adjusting, not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but slowly, subtly. Your definition of acceptable is shifting. What once would have been unthinkable is now manageable, even normal. You glance at your hands again. They're not perfectly clean, but they're cleaner than they were, and in 1325 that feels like a victory. You wipe them on your already questionable clothing, which seems to be the final step in the process. And just like that, your morning hygiene routine is complete. No mirror, no compliments, no lingering scent of lavender, just you, slightly less dirty, and ready to face a day that is already proving to be far more complicated than it has any right to be. Because somewhere out there people are still arguing, and not one of them is thinking about soap. Your outfit for the day is provided by the fine fashion house of whatever is available. You're handed rough, heavy fabric that feels like it was woven by someone who actively disliked comfort. It scratches, it clings, it does not breathe. You attempt to adjust it, but it seems determined to remain exactly as inconvenient as possible. Shoes are optional, depending on your luck, and even when you have them, they feel like they were designed for a slightly different foot. Probably someone else's. You are now fully dressed, which is to say, you are wearing your discomfort with confidence. You hold the garment up for a moment before putting it on, as if inspecting it might somehow improve the situation. It does not. The fabric stares back at you with the quiet confidence of something that has been uncomfortable for generations and sees no reason to change now. There are no tags, no sizes, no reassuring label that says soft cotton blend, just material, an expectation. You slip it over your head. Immediately you feel it. The texture is not aggressive, but it is persistent, like a mild argument happening directly on your skin. You shift your shoulders slightly, hoping it will settle into something more agreeable. It does not. It simply adapts to your movement in a way that ensures maximum awareness at all times. You pull at the sleeves. They are either too long or not long enough. There is no middle ground. You adjust again, then give up, accepting that this is not a system designed for customization. This is clothing with a purpose, to exist, to cover, and to endure. Comfort is optional, mostly theoretical. Next comes the outer layer, because apparently one level of inconvenience is not sufficient. This piece is heavier, thicker, and carries with it the faint smell of smoke and history. You put it on and immediately feel warmer, which is good. Also slightly restricted, which is less good. You attempt to move your arms freely. You can, but with a sense of negotiation. Every motion feels like it requires approval from the fabric. You reach forward, then back, testing your range like someone who just installed a new operating system and isn't entirely sure what works yet. It works, just not smoothly. Now for the shoes. You are handed something that resembles footwear in the same way your breakfast resembled food. Technically accurate, but emotionally confusing. You examine them briefly. They are made of leather, thick and sturdy, with a shape that suggests they were designed with a general idea of foot, rather than a specific one. You put one on, it fits, in the sense that your foot is inside it. You put the other on. This one has opinions. It presses slightly in places you weren't aware could be pressed. Not painfully, just insistently. You take a few steps, adjusting your weight, trying to find a rhythm that works. The shoes respond by existing exactly as they are. You walk a few more steps. This is your life now. There are no cushioned soles, no arch support, no reassuring bounce that tells you everything is going to be okay. Just leather, ground, and the quiet understanding that your feet are about to become very familiar with both. You look down at yourself. This is you, fully dressed for 1325. Layers of fabric, each one contributing to a collective experience that can best be described as committed. You are warm, covered, slightly restricted, and entirely out of your element. You take a breath. The clothing holds it with you. You exhale. It stays. There is no lightness here, no airy movement, just weight and presence. You're aware of every inch of what you're wearing, which is impressive considering how little you were aware of your clothes in your previous life. And yet, as you stand there, something shifts. You look around and realise that everyone else is dressed the same way, not identical, but similar. Layers, textures, shapes that prioritise function over feeling. No one is adjusting constantly. No one is complaining. This is simply how it is. You take a step forward, then another. The shoes protest slightly, then settle. The fabric moves with you, not gracefully, but reliably. You begin to find a rhythm, a way of existing within this new arrangement of yourself. It's not comfortable, but it's manageable, and in this world, that's more than enough. You roll your shoulders once more, as if preparing for something important. Because somewhere beyond your doorway, the city is still moving, still talking, still building, towards something that began, somehow, with a bucket. And now, fully dressed in layers of regret and determination, you're ready to face it. Or at least, dressed enough to pretend you are. Stepping outside, you're immediately immersed in a world that feels alive, loud, and slightly annoyed. The streets are narrow, uneven, and bustling with people, animals, and the occasional mysterious puddle that you wisely choose not to investigate. Vendors shout, children run, someone argues loudly about something that may or may not be bread-related. The buildings lean in close, as if they too are trying to hear the gossip, and everywhere there is movement, purposeful, chaotic, relentless movement. You are part of it now, whether you understand it or not. You take a few cautious steps forward, your new shoes negotiating every uneven stone like they're filing complaints with each footfall. The ground beneath you is not smooth. It's a patchwork of worn cobbles, dips, and subtle traps designed to remind you that balance is a privilege, not a right. You adjust your pace instinctively, learning quickly that walking here is less about speed and more about strategy. To your left, a man pushes a wooden cart stacked with goods that look important, though you have no idea what they are. He moves with determination, weaving through the crowd with the precision of someone who has done this 1,000 times. To your right, a woman is loudly negotiating with a vendor, her voice rising and falling like a performance. You don't understand the words, but the tone is universal. This price is unacceptable, and we will be discussing it. You keep moving. There is no clear path, no designated side of the street, no polite spacing. People pass close, very close, sometimes brushing against you without acknowledgement. It's not rude, it's just efficient. Space is limited, and everyone is using it fully. And then there are the animals. A goat wanders past you with complete confidence, as if it owns property here. A chicken darts between your legs, causing a brief moment of panic that you disguise as a graceful adjustment. Somewhere behind you, you hear the unmistakable sound of hooves, followed by someone shouting in a tone that suggests you should move. Immediately, you move, quickly. A cart rolls by, pulled by a horse that looks both patient and slightly disappointed in humanity. The driver barely glances at you as he passes, focused entirely on navigating the narrow street without turning it into a historical incident. You pause for a moment near what appears to be a small stall. The vendor is arranging items, vegetables you think, though they look more rugged than anything you're used to. He glances at you briefly, assessing, then returns to his work. There is no sales pitch, no friendly greeting, just a quiet understanding that if you want something, you'll ask. You don't, mostly because you're still trying to understand where you are, and why everyone seems slightly on edge. The noise continues around you, a constant hum of voices, movement and activity. It's not overwhelming exactly, just full. There is no silence here, no pause. Even the air feels busy, carrying fragments of conversation, the clatter of tools, the occasional burst of laughter or argument. You notice the buildings more closely now. They are tall, narrow and close together, their upper levels leaning slightly inward as if sharing secrets. The walls are rough, textured and marked by time. Small windows peek out at irregular intervals, some open, some shuttered, all contributing to the sense that you're being quietly observed. You probably are. You adjust your posture slightly, trying to look like you belong. It's not entirely convincing, but it's something. As you continue down the street, you begin to notice patterns. Groups of people gathered in small clusters, talking with intensity, gestures that repeat, words that seem to carry weight, even if you don't fully understand them. There is a shared focus here, a collective attention directed towards something just beyond your current awareness. You slow your pace, listen more closely. There's a word you hear more than once. You don't catch it fully, but the tone around it is unmistakable. It's important, charged, the kind of word that makes people lean in, lowers voices or raises them depending on the mood. You pass another group, this one more animated. A man gestures sharply, pointing down the street, his expression a mix of frustration and pride. Another responds, equally passionate. Heads nod, hands move. The conversation feels less like a discussion and more like a shared declaration. You're not just in a busy street. You're in a city that's building towards something. And as you stand there, surrounded by movement, noise, and a growing sense of purpose that you haven't quite grasped yet, you realize something important. This isn't chaos, it just looks like it. Underneath it all, there is structure, routine, understanding. Everyone knows their role, their place, their next step. Everyone except you. You take another careful step forward, adjusting your footing, your clothing, your expectations. Because in Medina, the streets don't slow down for confusion. They carry you with them, and somewhere in this controlled chaos, a bucket has already started a conversation that no one seems willing to end. Your neighbours are interesting. They're curious about you, in the way people are curious about something that might be useful or mildly suspicious. Conversations are direct. There is no small talk. Within minutes, someone has asked you where you're from, what you do, and why you look like you've just seen a ghost. Which, to be fair, you kind of have. They are warm, in their own way, but also deeply invested in local rivalries that you do not yet understand. You nod a lot. It seems like the safest option. You quickly learn that privacy, as you once knew it, does not exist here. Your arrival, your existence really, is already a topic of discussion. People glance at you, not rudely, but thoroughly. The kind of glance that gathers information. Your clothes, your posture, your slightly confused expression, all noted, catalogued, quietly debated. A man approaches you first. He doesn't ease into the conversation. There's no good morning or polite introduction. He simply looks at you, tilts his head slightly and says something that clearly requires an answer. His tone suggests this is not optional. You blink, process nothing, and respond with the universal language of medieval survival. A confident nod. He pauses, nods back. This, apparently, is enough. Another neighbour joins, then another. Suddenly you are part of a small, loosely formed circle of people who have collectively decided that you are today's point of interest. They speak quickly, overlapping at times, each adding something to the conversation that feels both important and slightly accusatory. You catch fragments, tone more than words, questions definitely, possibly opinions, maybe even mild concern. One of them gestures toward your clothes, then shrugs in a way that feels forgiving. Another points down the street, speaking with emphasis, like they're explaining something you absolutely should already know. You nod again. It's working so far. There's a rhythm to these interactions. Direct eye contact, clear expectations, no unnecessary filler. These are people who live close together, work hard, and don't have time for drawn-out social rituals. If they want to know something, they ask. If they have something to say, they say it. You appreciate the efficiency, even if you don't understand any of it. A woman steps forward now, her presence immediately shifting the dynamic. She looks at you with a sharper focus, as if she's the one who actually decides whether you belong here or not. She says something, short, precise, and waits. You consider your options. There are none. You nod, but this time you add a small gesture, a slight shrug, a polite half-smile, the kind that says, I am harmless, mildly confused and open to guidance. She studies you for a moment, then, unexpectedly, she smiles. It's brief, subtle, but it changes everything. The tension softens, the circle loosens. Someone laughs, quietly but genuinely. Another neighbour pats you on the shoulder in a way that feels both welcoming and slightly like a test. You have passed something. You're not sure what, but you're in. From this point on, the tone shifts. The questions become less intense. The gestures more explanatory than demanding. Someone hands you something, a piece of bread maybe, or just a gesture of inclusion. Another points out something down the street, speaking slower now, as if trying to help you follow along. You begin to pick up on more than just tone, names perhaps, places, repeated words that seem to carry weight. You hear Medina clearly, then another name, Bologna. The way it's said is different, sharper, more deliberate. You don't need a translation to understand that this is not a neutral topic. One of the men leans in slightly, lowering his voice as he speaks. Others nod along, their expressions tightening. There's a shared understanding here, something deeper than casual conversation. You catch a single word again, one you've heard more than once today. Bucket. You freeze, just for a moment. There it is again, the word that seems to follow you through this city like a quiet echo. You look around the group. Their faces are serious now, focused, invested in something that clearly matters. Not in an abstract way, but in a personal, immediate way. This isn't gossip. This is something else. You nod again. Of course you do. Because at this point, nodding is not just a response, it's a strategy. The conversation continues, flowing around you, through you, occasionally pausing to include you in ways you don't fully understand. But you're no longer outside of it. You're part of the rhythm now, part of the space. One of the neighbours gestures for you to follow them, not forcefully, just expectantly. As if the next step in your day has already been decided, and you've been quietly included. You hesitate for half a second, then step forward. Because in 1325, your neighbours don't just greet you, they assess you, accept you, and then immediately involve you in whatever is about to happen next. And judging by the way they keep saying that one word, it's going to involve a bucket. Now we arrive at the heart of the situation. The tension between Medina and Bologna is not new. It is old, layered, and deeply personal. These cities have been disagreeing for so long that no one entirely remembers how it started. But everyone agrees that it is very important. You begin to hear the names spoken with a certain tone. Modena, proud and stubborn. Bologna, equally proud and possibly louder. This is not just politics, this is identity. And you have just woken up in the middle of it. You walk alongside your newly acquired neighbours, who continue talking as if you've always been part of this conversation, which is both comforting and slightly alarming. The name Bologna comes up again and again. Each time it carries weight, not just as a place, but as a feeling. You start to piece things together. This isn't just two cities that don't get along because of a minor disagreement over property lines or whose bread is better. This is something deeper. In 1325, northern Italy is not one unified country. It is a patchwork of independent city-states, each with its own loyalties, alliances, and very strong opinions about everything. And Modena and Bologna, they're on opposite sides of a much larger divide. You begin to hear new words woven into the conversation. Names that don't sound like places but factions. Guelphs, Ghibellines. They're spoken with the kind of seriousness that suggests you should absolutely know what they mean. And absolutely pick one. Here's the situation. Some cities support the Pope, those are the Guelphs. Others support the Holy Roman Emperor, those are the Ghibellines. It's a political and religious divide, but also a deeply social one. Families, neighbourhoods, entire cities align themselves with one side or the other. And Modena, Ghibelline, Bologna, very much Guelph. So when these two cities look at each other, they're not just seeing neighbours, they're seeing rivals, opposites, people who represent everything they are not. You glance at the faces around you as the conversation continues. There's pride there, a quiet certainty. Modena is right. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? You nod slightly because that seems appropriate. One of the men gestures broadly as he speaks, clearly describing something historical. Past battles, old victories, maybe a particularly satisfying moment where Bologna was proven wrong about something. The others listen, occasionally adding their own pieces, building a shared narrative that feels less like history and more like a collective memory. You realise something important. This rivalry is not abstract. It's lived. It's in the stories they tell, the way they speak, the assumptions they carry. It's part of daily life, woven into conversations as naturally as weather or work. You don't need a formal explanation to feel it. It's everywhere. You pass by a small group of men further down the street. Their conversation stops briefly as your group approaches. There's a pause, a glance, not hostile but aware. Then the conversation resumes, but quieter, more contained. You lean slightly toward one of your neighbours, trying to understand the shift. He mutters something under his breath. A single word stands out. Bologna. You look again. Ah, not everyone here is from Medina, or at least, not everyone is trusted the same way. You continue walking, the tension subtle but present. It's not open conflict. Not here, not yet. But it's close enough that you can feel it, like a storm that hasn't arrived, but has already changed the air. And then you hear it again. That word. Bucket. It slips into the conversation almost casually, but the reaction is immediate. Faces tighten, voices sharpen. The tone shifts from general rivalry to something more specific, more recent. You don't understand all the details yet, but you understand this. The bucket is not just a bucket, it is a symbol of disrespect, of defiance, of one city doing something that the other cannot ignore. You imagine briefly explaining this to someone from your time. Yes, there was a conflict. Very serious. Lots of tension. Deeply rooted political divisions. And also, a bucket. You pause that thought. Because here, right now, it makes perfect sense. The rivalry has been building for years, decades even. Alliances, disagreements, small conflicts that never fully resolved. All it takes is one moment, one action, to bring everything to the surface. And apparently, that moment involved a bucket. You walk a little slower now, absorbing the weight of it all, the pride, the history, the quiet readiness for something more. Because this isn't just background noise, this is the foundation of what's coming. And as your neighbours continue talking, gesturing, reliving moments you weren't there for, you realise that you are no longer just observing a city. You're inside a story that has been unfolding for generations. A story where loyalty matters, where identity is everything, and where, somehow, a single bucket has become the final straw. And then, the bucket. Somewhere, somehow, a bucket has been taken, stolen, removed, relocated without permission, and this is not being treated as a minor inconvenience. This is an insult, a statement, possibly even a declaration. You try to process this. A bucket, a wooden container. The kind of thing you would barely notice in your own life has now become the centre of a growing conflict. People are talking about it with intensity, with passion, with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for taxes or group chats. You slow your walking slightly, trying to catch more of the conversation. The word comes up again, bucket, and every time it does, the tone shifts. Voices tighten, gestures sharpen, someone taps their chest. Another points outward, toward the vague direction of Bologna, as if the city itself is personally responsible for everything that has ever gone wrong. You piece together what you can. The bucket wasn't just lost. It wasn't misplaced or accidentally borrowed and never returned. It was taken deliberately by soldiers from Medina during a raid on Bologna. Not as a practical necessity, not because they urgently needed a bucket, but because they could. And now, it's back here, in Medina, like a trophy. You stop walking for a moment. You try to imagine this happening in your own time. A group of people storms into another city, takes a bucket, and then proudly displays it like they've just won a championship. And instead of everyone laughing and moving on, war. You blink. You look around at the faces of your neighbours. They are not joking, not even slightly. This is real. This matters. The bucket has become something else entirely, something symbolic. It's not about water, it's about pride. In a world where cities define identity, where loyalty is tied to walls and streets and shared history, taking something from another city, even something small, is not small at all. It's a statement. We came into your space. We took what we wanted, and you couldn't stop us. You glance at one of the men beside you. He's speaking with quiet intensity now, explaining something, likely the story of how the bucket was taken, who was involved, what it means. Others nod along, their expressions firm. You nod too. Of course you do. Because at this point, questioning the importance of the bucket feels like questioning gravity. You pass a small square where a group of people has gathered more densely. In the centre, someone is gesturing dramatically, retelling the story for what is clearly not the first time. His arms move wide, his voice rising and falling, pulling the crowd in. You catch pieces of it. Raid, night, victory, bucket. Each time he says the word, there's a ripple through the crowd. Not laughter, not disbelief, just recognition, agreement, a shared understanding that this object, this simple wooden container, now carries weight far beyond its original purpose. You imagine the bucket itself, probably worn, maybe slightly cracked, definitely not glamorous. It doesn't glow, it doesn't hum with power, it just exists. And yet here it is, sitting somewhere in this city, at the centre of a growing storm. You wonder where it is now, displayed, hidden, guarded. Is there someone assigned to watch it? Do they take shifts? Is there a bucket supervisor who takes this role very seriously? You almost smile. Then you look around again and decide not to, because no one here finds this amusing. To them, the bucket is proof, evidence, a reminder of a moment where Modena asserted itself over Bologna, and for Bologna, it's the opposite, a humiliation, a challenge that cannot go unanswered. You hear the name Bologna again, this time spoken with sharper edges. Someone spits lightly to the side, not dramatically, just enough to make a point. Another crosses his arms, shaking his head. The mood is shifting. What began as explanation is turning into expectation. Something is going to happen. You feel it now, clearly. This isn't just a story people are telling each other to pass the time. This is a build-up, a collective tightening of resolve, the kind that leads to action, all because of a bucket. You take a slow breath, letting it out carefully. In your world, objects are replaceable. If someone takes your bucket, you get another one. Maybe complain about it online. Possibly write a mildly passive-aggressive message. Here, you raise an army. You look around one more time, taking in the faces, the tension, the shared certainty, and you realise something that feels both absurd and completely logical in this moment. You didn't just wake up in medieval Italy. You woke up in the middle of a situation where a bucket has officially become everyone's problem. And somehow, it's about to become yours too. You quickly learn that civic pride in 1325 is not subtle. It is loud, visible, and occasionally armed. People care deeply about their city, their traditions, and their right to be correct at all times. This pride fuels everything, from daily interactions to large-scale decisions that may or may not involve weapons. You find yourself caught in conversations where the bucket is no longer just a bucket. It is a symbol of honour, of defiance, of we will not let this go. You continue walking with your neighbours, but now you notice something new. It's not just what they say, it's how they carry themselves. Shoulders slightly back, chin a little higher, a quiet, ever-present awareness of where they belong and who doesn't. Modena is not just a place, it's an identity, and everyone here wears it like armour. You pass by a group of men repairing something wooden, tools in hand, movements steady. As your group walks by, they pause briefly, nodding in acknowledgement. Not a greeting exactly, more like a shared understanding. You belong here, or at least you're with people who do. One of your neighbours taps his chest lightly as he speaks. Modena. Then gestures outward again. Bologna. The contrast is immediate, even without translation. One is home, the other is not. You nod because this feels like a moment that requires agreement. He smiles slightly, satisfied. You have successfully expressed loyalty to something you learned about approximately 10 minutes ago. Progress. As you move further through the streets, you begin to see how this pride shows up in everyday life. It's in the way people talk about their city, like it's a living thing, a character, something with a reputation to maintain. It's in the buildings too. Not grand in the way you might expect, but solid, established, built with the quiet confidence of a place that knows it has been here, and will continue to be here. And it's in the way people react to the idea of being challenged. You overhear another conversation. Two men standing close, speaking with intensity. You catch the word Bologna again, followed by something that sounds less like a statement and more like a refusal. One of them shakes his head firmly. No, not acceptable. Whatever Bologna has done, or might do, it crosses a line. You don't know exactly where that line is, but it exists, and the bucket has definitely crossed it. You find yourself being pulled slightly closer into another discussion. This one is more animated. Voices rise, hands move. Someone makes a sweeping gesture as if outlining the entire situation in the air. You catch fragments. Honour, city, response. These are not casual words, they carry weight, expectation, a sense that action is not just possible, but necessary. You glance around again, noticing how many people are engaged in similar conversations. Different groups, different corners of the street, but the same energy, the same focus. This is not isolated, this is collective. You begin to understand that civic pride here isn't just about liking where you live, it's about defending it, representing it, standing by it even when the situation involves a bucket, especially when it involves a bucket, because now the bucket is proof. Proof that Modena acted. Proof that Bologna was caught off guard. Proof that something small can become something much larger when pride is involved. You imagine someone from your time saying, "It's not that serious." And here, that sentence would not go over well at all. You pass by a small building where a few older men sit, watching the street with calm, measured expressions. They're not speaking loudly, not gesturing wildly, but they're listening, observing, taking in everything. One of them looks at you briefly, then at the group you're with, he nods once. Approval? Maybe. Or just acknowledgement that you're now part of whatever this is becoming. You nod back. Because at this point, nodding has become your primary skill. You continue walking, the conversations blending into a steady hum of shared conviction. No one is indifferent, no one is detached. Everyone has a position, a stance, a sense of what should happen next, and you realise something that feels both impressive and slightly terrifying. There is no such thing as staying out of it. Not here, not now. In 1325, if you're in Modena, you are Modena. And Modena at this moment is not in the mood to let anything go, especially not something that fits perfectly in your hand, and has somehow become a matter of honour. You take a slow breath, adjusting your stance, your expectations, your entire understanding of what counts as a big deal. Because here, civic pride isn't just strong, it's ready. And somewhere nearby, a bucket is still making things worse. Without much discussion, you now have a role. Medieval life has a way of assigning you responsibilities before you even realise you've agreed to them. Whether it's carrying things, fixing things, or simply being present while things happen, you are now part of the system. There is no onboarding process, no training video, just expectation. You do your best. It seems to be enough. It begins subtly. Someone hands you something, not aggressively, not ceremoniously, just hands it to you. A bundle of something wrapped in cloth. It has weight, which immediately tells you this is not symbolic. This is real. You take it instinctively, because refusing it would require confidence you do not currently possess. You look at it. It does not explain itself. You look back at the person who handed it to you. They nod. Ah, that clears everything up. You fall into step with the group carrying your new responsibility, like someone who absolutely knows what they're doing. Your posture improves slightly, not out of confidence, but out of necessity. Whatever this is, you're now involved. Welcome to employment. You glance around to see what others are doing. This seems important. Everyone has a task. Some are carrying tools, others are moving materials, wood, sacks, things that clink slightly when shifted. A few are simply walking with purpose, which somehow looks just as legitimate. You adjust your grip on the bundle. It shifts slightly, reminding you that it exists and expects to be taken seriously. You nod again. Of course, you've got this. Probably. You follow along as the group moves through the streets, eventually stopping near a space where more people have gathered. There's activity here, organised, but not formally. People are setting things down, picking things up, giving instructions in quick, efficient bursts. You're now in what can only be described as a medieval version of everyone just knows what to do, except you. You stand there for a moment, holding your bundle, waiting for a sign. Something clear, something obvious. Instead, you get a glance, a gesture, a quick motion toward a pile nearby. You walk over, carefully. You place the bundle down next to similar bundles, trying to match their arrangement as closely as possible. You step back, observing your work. It looks acceptable. No one corrects you. This is a victory. Immediately someone hands you something else. Of course they do. This time it's lighter, wooden, possibly a tool. You hold it, turning it slightly, trying to determine its purpose without looking like you're trying to determine its purpose. You watch someone nearby using a similar object. You imitate. Not perfectly, but close enough. This is your new strategy. Observe, mimic, survive. Minutes pass, or maybe longer. Time feels different here, less structured, more. Absorbed into the activity itself. You move when others move. You stop when they stop. You carry, place, adjust, repeat. No one checks your credentials. No one asks if you're qualified. Because in this world, qualification is simple. Are you here? Are you trying? Good enough. At one point, someone claps you lightly on the shoulder. Not hard. Just enough to acknowledge your presence. You look up. They nod. Approval. You nod back. Of course. This is your language now. You begin to feel it. The rhythm of work. The quiet coordination. The way people move around each other without needing constant explanation. It's not chaotic. It's practiced. Learned over time, passed down through repetition rather than instruction. You are participating, not leading, not excelling, but present, useful, and that's enough. You pause briefly, catching your breath, looking around at the scene. People working, talking, preparing. There's an undercurrent here, something building. This isn't just routine labour, there's purpose behind it. Urgency. You hear it again, the word bucket. It slips into conversation like a spark, instantly recognised, instantly understood. Heads turn slightly, voices lower, then rise again with renewed focus. Whatever you're doing, it's connected. Of course it is. Everything is. You pick up another item, adjusting your grip with slightly more confidence this time. Your movements are smoother now, less hesitant, still not entirely correct, but convincingly close. And in this moment, you realise something quietly profound. You didn't choose this job chose you, no interview, no resume. No polite email saying we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Just a bundle in your hands and a nod that said, you're in. You take another step, falling back into rhythm, blending into the flow of activity around you. Because in 1325, employment isn't about passion, it's about participation, and right now, you're officially part of whatever this day is becoming, which, judging by the conversations around you, is still very much about that bucket. Information spreads quickly here, and changes slightly with each retelling. The story of the bucket evolves, it grows, details are added, motives are questioned. By the time you hear it for the 5th time, the bucket may have been stolen heroically, tragically, or by someone's cousin who definitely had a reason. You nod again. This seems to be the correct response. You notice it almost immediately. You're still working, carrying, placing, pretending you understand tools, and yet the conversations around you are multiplying, not repeating, multiplying. Like each version of the story is branching into its own slightly different reality. You hear it once, a small group, late at night, quick raid. You nod, that seems reasonable. Then you hear it again, a bold move, right under their noses. They didn't even see it coming. More dramatic. Then again, a massive force. Hundreds of men. They took the bucket as a symbol of total dominance. You pause. Hundreds? For a bucket? You glance at the speaker. He looks completely convinced. You nod. Of course. This is clearly how history works now. You continue your task, but your ears are doing most of the work. Every few steps, a new version of the story drifts past you. Each one slightly louder, slightly more confident, slightly more embellished. Someone nearby insists the bucket was taken from the very centre of Bologna in broad daylight, while their guards watched helplessly. Another claims it was retrieved from a well so deep that only the bravest men dared approach it. A third quietly adds that the bucket itself is special. You turn slightly at that. Special how? He lowers his voice. Not magical, but important. You nod slowly. That clears everything up. You begin to understand something essential about medieval information flow. There is no central source, no official statement, no verified account. There is only people, telling stories, with increasing confidence, and each person believes their version just a little more than the last. You pass by a small cluster of workers taking a brief pause. One of them is mid-story, his hands moving rapidly, painting a picture in the air. He describes the moment the bucket was lifted. You can see it now, according to him at least. Torches flickering, shadows stretching. A group of men moving with precision, silence, purpose. The bucket, revealed, taken, carried back like a prize. The others around him listen closely, nodding, occasionally adding a detail of their own. One corrects him slightly, not contradicting, just enhancing. No, it was guarded. Ah yes, guarded. That makes it better. The story grows again. You step back, watching this process unfold in real time. It's not misinformation, not exactly. It's more like collaborative storytelling. Each person adding a piece, shaping the narrative, making it more meaningful, more memorable, more theirs. You realise that by the end of the day, there will not be one story of the bucket. There will be dozens, all slightly different, all equally believed. You adjust your grip on the item in your hands, something wooden, still unclear in purpose, and continue working. The rhythm helps. The repetition grounds you, but the stories keep coming. Now someone is talking about Bologna's reaction. They were furious. You nod. That feels accurate. They couldn't believe it. Also fair. They're already preparing. You pause. Preparing. You look up slightly, trying not to seem too obvious. The tone has shifted again. Less storytelling. More anticipation. Another voice joins in, quieter, more serious. They won't let this go. You feel that one. It lands differently. You glance around. The energy has changed. Still active. Still busy. But underneath it, something else. A current. A shared awareness that this isn't just a story anymore. It's becoming something real. You take a slow breath, letting it out carefully. Because in your world, news travels fast, but it also gets corrected, verified, updated. Here, news travels fast and becomes truth along the way. Not because it's accurate, but because enough people believe it. You look around at the faces near you, focused, engaged, certain. The bucket is no longer just an object. It's a story, a growing, evolving story that is being told and retold in real time. And every version adds weight. Every retelling adds pressure, until eventually, the story becomes something that demands a response. You pick up another item, moving it into place with slightly more confidence than before. Because at this point you understand something very clearly. It doesn't matter how the bucket was taken. It matters how people believe it was taken. And right now, those beliefs are getting bigger, louder, more certain. You nod once more, almost instinctively, as another version of the story passes by. Because in 1325, information doesn't just spread, it grows. And somehow, every version still ends the same way, with a bucket, and a problem that's getting harder to ignore. As the day continues, preparations begin, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but in a steady, practical way that feels even more serious. People gather supplies, weapons are checked, plans are discussed. There is an air of inevitability, like everyone knows where this is heading, and no one is particularly surprised. You are swept along with it, still trying to fully understand how a bucket became the main character. At first, it doesn't look like preparation for conflict. It looks like organisation, people moving things, stacking items, checking tools, talking in small groups with focused expressions. If you didn't know better, you might think this was just another busy day, repairs, deliveries, maybe some large project that requires everyone's attention. But you do know better, because of the tone. There's a quiet urgency in the way people move, not rushed, but efficient. Conversations are shorter now, more purposeful, less storytelling, more planning. The energy has shifted from "did you hear what happened" to "this is what we're going to do about it." You're handed something again. Of course you are. This time it's heavier, longer. You hold it carefully, examining it without examining it. It's a pole, or maybe a spear, possibly both. The difference feels important, but not important enough to ask about. You grip it slightly tighter. It feels real. You glance around. Others are holding similar items, some sharper, some more polished. Some clearly used before, worn in ways that suggest experience rather than decoration. You nod. Yes. This is definitely not just a casual Tuesday. Nearby, a group of men is gathered around what looks like a collection of equipment. They're checking edges, tightening bindings, testing weight. One of them swings something lightly, not to show off, but to feel it, to understand it. You try not to stare, because you are now holding something that also has potential. You adjust your grip again, carefully. You walk a few steps mimicking the posture of those around you. Not aggressive, not defensive, just ready, or at least convincingly close to ready. A man approaches looking at what you're holding. He nods once, then adjusts your hand slightly, just a small correction. You let him. He steps back, satisfied. You nod back. Of course. This is now a collaborative effort. You move with the group as they shift toward a more open area. The space feels intentional, not random, like it has been used before for exactly this kind of gathering. People form loose lines, not rigid, not formal, but organised enough to suggest this isn't their first time doing something like this. You take your place somewhere in the middle, because the middle feels safe, not too visible, not too questionable, just present. You watch as someone steps forward, older, more experienced, clearly used to being listened to. He speaks, his voice steady, not loud, but carrying enough weight to hold attention. You don't understand every word, but you understand the structure. This is a briefing, not dramatic, not inspiring in the way modern speeches try to be, just clear, direct, focused on what needs to happen. There are gestures toward the road, toward the direction of Bologna, toward the people gathered here. You feel it now, the shift from possibility to intention. This is no longer just preparation. This is commitment. You swallow slightly, adjusting your stance, your grip, your expectations. Because a few hours ago, your biggest concern was bread that fought back. Now, you're holding something that suggests a very different kind of problem. You glance at the faces around you. No panic, no hesitation, just a quiet readiness. These are not people who are being forced into something. They are stepping into it, together, with a shared understanding that this is what happens when lines are crossed, even if that line was drawn around a bucket. You take a slow breath. The air feels different now, heavier, charged with something that wasn't there before, or maybe it was, and you're only just noticing it. A hand lands briefly on your shoulder. You turn slightly. One of your neighbours. He nods, not a question, a confirmation. You nod back. Because what else are you going to do? The group begins to move again, slowly, deliberately, not running, not rushing, just advancing into whatever comes next. You follow, because at this point, following is your best skill, and as you walk, the realization settles in, calm but undeniable. This is how it happens, not with a sudden explosion of chaos, but with quiet, steady steps, with people picking up tools, checking edges, nodding to each other, and moving forward together, because something small became something meaningful, and something meaningful became something that couldn't be ignored, all because, somewhere along the way, a bucket stopped being just a bucket. The group begins to move, not in a frantic rush, but in a slow, steady procession that feels far more serious than any dramatic charge. There are no loud battle cries, no cinematic music swelling in the background, just footsteps. Dozens of them, then hundreds. The quiet rhythm of people walking with purpose. You are among them now, carried forward by the same momentum that started with a conversation, and somehow turned into this. At first it feels almost ordinary, just walking. You've done this before, many times. Walking is one of your core competencies. You place one foot in front of the other, adjusting to the uneven road, the weight of what you're carrying, the presence of people on all sides of you. This is manageable. Then you look around, and it stops feeling ordinary, because this isn't a casual stroll. This is a city, moving. Men of different ages, different builds, different levels of confidence, all walking in the same direction. Some speak quietly to each other, others remain silent, focused. A few glance around, scanning the path ahead, as if expecting something to appear at any moment. You tighten your grip on what you're holding, not because you need to, but because everyone else is. You adjust your pace slightly to match those around you, not too fast, not too slow, just aligned. There's a rhythm to it, an unspoken agreement about speed, spacing, direction. No one gives instructions, And yet, everyone seems to know what to do. You pass through the edge of the city where the buildings begin to thin out and the road opens up into something wider, less structured. The air changes here, less dense, less crowded, but not calmer.